I'll just make a new Java project for today and call it day 5. Right, and I'll just add the jar files. Right. So we have this day 5 project. Fine. And today what we are going to do is we are going to move forward with object identification. Right. Yesterday I told you that you can launch dynamic browsers and go to a website, and driver.findElement command will help you to find element on the web page. Okay, and you get the web element for that. Right. Hold on, let me just increase the font size. Okay, so out here, right, driver.findElement by the id login id. So this command will go and find the web element, and on the web element you can fire the commands. Okay, we saw finding the elements, and similarly, you instead of by.id you can also reuse by.name and use the name of the element and interact with the element. Okay, but every element is not having id or a name. All right, every element never has an ID or a name. Let me run this program. Hold on. For example, if you go to the same website, zoho.com, which we were using, right? And over here, you'll observe that you enter the username, and this a text field had an ID. But suppose I want to read this text, sign in text or choose access Zoho account, right? Or I want to click on this link, sign up now. So if I investigate this on the browser, and if I look at this link, okay, you see that this has got no ID, nothing. So there are elements on the page which won't have an ID or which won't have a name, and you will have to, work with those elements. You'll have to identify those elements. So how do we do that? Okay, to do that, we use the concept of XPaths. Okay, now if I talk about XPaths, then broadly, what is an XPath? XPath is like the address of the element on the web page, right? XPath is something which is, which helps you to find the element. Like you have an address, that address identifies you, right? So XPath is like the address of the element. Okay, and there are two types of XPaths. One is complete XPath and one is a partial XPath. Okay, now complete XPath is the one which starts from the root of the document. Okay, like for example, I'll tell you, if I analyze this username field, fine, and the page source will be highlighted. Okay, so the root of the document is HTML. This HTML tag is the very root of the document. Under this, everything is present. Right. So hold on. If I look at the text over here, sign in. Right. Then this sign in text is over here. This is the text in the page source. Okay. And what I'll do is I'm going to start from the HTML tag. Fine. So if you hit Control F of the keyboard, you click on this page source and hit Control F, you will see a text field coming up over here. Okay. So in the text field, I'm going to write the base tag HTML. So if I write HTML over here, then in the page source, the HTML tag would be highlighted in yellow. Okay. And HTML tag has got head tag and body tag. Fine. The span tag, which is having the text as sign in, is somewhere inside the body tag. Okay, it is somewhere inside the body tag. So I'll write HTML/body. That means inside the HTML tag, go to the body tag. So the control reaches the body tag and body tag is highlighted in yellow. Okay, so we want to reach this sign in tag. Now inside the body tag, there are many division tags which are parallel to each other. You see that? All these division tags are parallel to each other. Right. We want to go inside this particular division, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth division. Okay, because the span, this element is somewhere inside the fifth division. If I write /div, it will say 1 out of 7 elements. That means there are 7 division tags under the body tag. You are right now on the first one. If I click on the down sign, then every division will be highlighted. Okay, you see that these are all the divisions. Now if I want to specifically go inside the first division, then I will have to write div bracket 1. If I want second, then div 2, like this. If I want to go inside this one, which is the fifth one, okay, because the fifth one is holding the sign in link, I will have to write div 5. Don't write any division, it will represent all the divisions. Okay, so we reach the fifth division. Then in the fifth division again, you have got 4 parallel divisions. There are 4 div tags parallel to each other. You want to go inside the third one. Alright, so you will write div bracket 3. So you reach the third one. And then inside the third one, you have got around 6 parallel divisions again, and you want to go in the second one. Okay, right, so you will write /div bracket 2. Under this, there is this form tag. Then there are few division tags. You want to go inside the form tag. Okay, so you will write /form, and then under the form tag, there are multiple divisions. You want the first division. Okay, so /div bracket 1, and in the first division there are 2 span tags and 2 div tags. You want to go inside the first span tag, which is having the sign in text, so you will write /span bracket 1. So this way you reach the span tag over here. Okay, so this becomes your complete XPath. Alright, you don't need to create the complete XPath the way I did for every element. You can get it from the browser as well. you can simply go to the browser and say I investigate the element sign in, right? This is the sign in element. You just right click on it, you will get the option copy full XPath. Not copy XPath, copy full XPath. So when you copy the full XPath, you will get the XPath like this. There will be initial slash. You can omit this slash if you want, it's no need. So you get the same XPath which I have calculated manually. But you should know how this is formed. What is meant by div 5, div 3, how the traversing happens. You have to understand that, because if you don't understand these things, then you'll fall into two problems. One is when you get some error, you'll not know how to solve it. Secondly, in the interviews also you can be asked about this. Okay, now if I use this complete XPath in my code, right, I will copy the code over here. In this code, after going to Zoho login, right, instead of extracting elements, if I write driver dot find element by the XPath and I give the XPath which I just calculated out here, and I write dot get text. So what will this give you? This is going to give you the text of that particular text which is written over there, and you can print that text. Okay, if you run this code, so get text command will give you the text out of the element. Right, so this XPath was representing the sign in text. So this will extract the sign in text. So it's going to take a little while. Chrome driver is launching. Right. Now we don't prefer to use this XPath. We don't prefer to use the complete XPaths. The reason is very simple. I'll tell you. I'll let this thing run first. You see that?
Ashish, can we reduce the time to launch the browser? Even in our machines, it is taking such a long time.
It takes time. It takes time.
Expected.
There is no way to reduce that. Okay. So it's printing sign in. This is the text. This is the title of the page which I had printed. Right. Now, once the browser is launched, the script runs quite smoothly. Fine. Now the thing is, this type of XPath we don't prefer to use, because if something changes in the website at the very root level, okay, suppose a new tag is added somewhere over here, then not just this XPath, all the XPaths of the application will get changed. Okay, because all the XPaths will start from HTML body, because these are the very starting tags. Okay, inside the body tag itself, everything is there generally. So if something gets changed right inside it, so all the XPaths, they will get changed and it will get a problem. So we don't prefer to use this. Okay, what we prefer is partial XPath. Partial XPath is something which starts with a double slash. Okay, complete XPath can start with a single slash as well. If you want, you can put it. If you don't want, you can omit it. But partial XPath mandatorily starts from a double slash. Okay, double slash star. This basically means all the tags on the page. Okay, if I write double slash star and if I hit Control F and write double slash star over here, so it will represent every tag on the web page. Okay, so it says that 565 number over here. Okay, so this will represent all the tags on the web page. And if I write double slash, if I put the tag name, say if I put the tag name input, so this will represent all the input tags on the page. Right, so if I write double slash input, so all the input tags, there are 15 input tags, they will get highlighted. If I write double slash A, that means anchor tag, it will represent all the links on the web page. See that? Right, because all the links have the tag name A, anchor tag. All right, so a partial XPath starts with a double slash. Right, now if I say investigate the username field over here and right click on the username field and I write copy and I click on copy, you get a lot of options. One of them is copy XPath, the other one is copy full XPath. Okay, copy full XPath will give you the complete XPath of this username field from the HTML document. But copy XPath will give you the partial XPath. If you do this, then you see this kind of XPath you get. What is this XPath? If it says double slash star, double slash star means all the elements on the web page. Okay, so it basically says that double slash star all the elements on the web page. From all the elements, get me the element whose ID is login ID. Okay, the ID of this text field over here is login ID. So from all the elements on the web page, you get the element whose ID is login ID. In Selenium, we don't actually, it comes up with a double quotes. In Selenium, we don't need the double quotes. We use single quotes. You can also use single quotes over here. Copy it and paste it over here. It will say 1 out of 1 element and the element will be highlighted if you click on the down arrow. So it boils down to this username field. Right. Okay. Similarly, if you look at this next button, this is the next button. If you copy the XPath, it comes up like this. That is double slash star out of all the elements. Give me the element whose ID is next button. Or you can also use, instead of star, you can put the tag name. The tag name for the text field was input. Out of all the input tags, give me the input tag whose ID is login ID. And
I have a question here, like which is faster, if you give just ID or if you give double slash input and then ID? Is there any difference in identifying? Performance.
The speed is very fast in any case.
Oh, okay.
There might be a slight difference here or there, but it doesn't make difference. Okay.
So if we know what is the tag type, for sure, then we can mention the tag type, right? instead of
Yes.
star?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So for example, over here for next button, the tag name is button. The ID is next button. So you can write /button. The tag name, this is the tag name out of all the buttons. Give me the button whose ID is next button. So this is the attribute. Okay. You can also uh, do one thing, that is out here. Just a minute. Yeah. You can write the code out here. You can take the X path and you can write over here driver dot find element by the X path. I will give the X path of the username field. So this will give you the web element, right? On that web element you need to type something. So you type send keys hello. So instead of using ID, I've used the X path now, and if I run the program, this will be giving me the right output. It will be typing in hello. It's taking time today to open the browser, but generally it doesn't take that much time on my machine. Maybe I need to restart or something. You see that it goes and types hello. Right. Now, the next thing is, once this is done, right, you can also, just a minute, you can also use the same XPath on different browser. If I change the browser to Mozilla and if I run the script, I will not get any error because the page source remains the same. You can run the same script on different browser as well. Okay, right. Now just let it run, and meanwhile it runs on this Chrome browser. Let me open a new website like bbc.com. This thing is hanging like anything today. Just a minute, guys. See, it's launched Mozilla and it has typed in hello over here. Okay, just a minute, guys. Let me just close some things on my PC. Unable to terminate. Just hold on. Okay, so if you move over to bbc.com, on this website, if I look at the link, say on the top, news, right? So if I investigate this link, news, and suppose if I have to click on it, fine, I go and investigate this link. This is the news link. So if I copy the partial XPath, I will get the partial XPath something like this. So there's an element whose ID is this, right? So you go to the page source and you get this element. All right, forget about this, what I had written. So what happens is that this link has got no ID. So it's unable to find the link. Okay, so not find the link, it's unable to detect, you cannot detect it without an ID. So it's unable to find the ID. So it jumps one tag above inside the li tag. This li tag has also not got any ID. So it jumps one tag above in the ul tag. This ul tag has also not got any ID. So it jumps one tag above in this div tag, which finally has an ID. So this div tag has an ID. So everything will start from this particular div tag, right? The XPath will start from this div tag. If I copy the XPath, so what it does is that it starts the XPath with this particular div tag. Instead of star, you can also write div, that there is a div tag whose ID is this. Under the div tag, it goes into the UL tag. Under the UL tag, there are multiple li tags. You want to go in the second one, it goes into li2 and it goes into the XPath, sorry, the anchor tag A. So Firefox, sorry, no, the Chrome inspector builds up the XPath from the nearest possible element which has an ID. If the element itself is having an ID, it will use that ID itself. Otherwise, it will traverse the tags. Fine. So this is also the XPath. And most of the times, when you don't have an ID of an element, okay, you have to go for XPaths, and Chrome Inspector will calculate the XPaths from the nearest possible elements having an ID. Okay, if I look at, say, this link, okay, then if I copy the XPath of this link, so this link has got no ID. You get an XPath something like this big XPath. It starts with an element whose ID is page. So that element would be somewhere over here. This is the division whose ID is page. So it traverses down from this element to this link and gives you the XPath. Okay, right. So this happens. You won't get XPaths as simple as this one every time. All right, you will certainly get few complicated XPaths. All right, even if they are partial XPaths. All right, fine. Now moving ahead, this is done. XPaths is done. There are other types of XPaths as well, which I'm going to tell you, but at times you've come across errors and exceptions. For example, over here, by chance, if I write div 6 instead of 5, I give the wrong division number. I'm finding the element with an XPath. Okay, so if you copy this XPath and use it on Zoho, 0 out of 0 elements. It's not going to find any element. Right. In this case, if you run the code, let it run. So there are no elements. So you see that as soon as the browser opens, goes to the website, you get an exception. No such element exception. So no such element exception is, as the name clearly says, that element is not found. Okay. So what do you do in this case? First of all, you know, out here, just a minute. You have to make sure that the element is there on the web page. Sometimes elements they take time to load. Maybe the page loads and after 5 seconds the element loads, right? But before I go to all these things, let me talk about exceptions in Java. Before we go to manage these things, right? You should be understanding what exactly exceptions are there in Java and how do exceptions they work. What, how did we get this no such element exception? All right. So I'm going to jump a little bit towards Java first, and then I'm going to come back to Selenium. Right. Yesterday I had told you that you need to start the browsers with some configurations, maximize notifications, SSL and all. Look, these are standard set of codes. All right. I don't want to cover them in the training. You just need to add few lines of code to, make a browser maximize or to overcome a SSL error or to configure a proxy. In order to do that, you can simply go under Selenium training, log in into your account. Okay, I'll just tell you the pre-recorded video which you need to watch. Okay, you go to the course details, and this is a simple piece of code. At times you have to block the notifications as well, or you need to do the proxy settings in certain project. Okay, so the code is quite standard, and just look at this module over here. My PC is hanging like anything today. Yes, this is the section under driver classes for under scripting and different browsers. You will have managing browser notifications, SSL errors, proxy settings, browser logs. Okay, just have a look at this. Right, it's just around 1 hour. It will tell you everything. Okay, now let's look at exception management. This is important. Okay, suppose I'll make a new Java file. I'll make a new class. Exception is nothing but you can say an undesired flow or an undesired place where you never want to be and you somehow reach that place while coding. Right. So let me just take an example on exceptions. if I make a program, if I write say int I equals to 9 divided by 0, and I write over here system.out.println a and b. So if I write 9 by 2, if I run this, this is going to run normally and it will be printing a and b. However, instead of 2, if I put 0, you run this, it prints a and you get arithmetic exception divided by 0. It also tells you in the line number, it's in the line number 7. If you click on this, the 7th line will be highlighted in the page source. This is known as the exception trace. This trace has the definition of the exception and the file name and the line number on which the exception is coming up. You need to understand how to read this trace. With time, you will be able to understand. Okay, for example, when we were working in dynamic browsers, if I run this dynamic browser, you get a bigger exception trace over here. Okay, so let it run. Just hold on. So out here, you get a bigger exception trace. It's not as small as the last one. So some internal classes, these are some internal classes of Selenium. And ultimately the error was in dynamic browsers line number 27. You click on this line and the line will also get highlighted that on this line the exception came up. So you need to gradually learn how to read this exception trace. That will help you to resolve the issues in a very fast manner. Now, if I look at the program which I had written, I had printed A and B. See, A only prints because there's an exception in line number 7. The control stops on this particular line. Now, at times you want that, the control should not be stopping. If there is some Selenium code exception comes up in between, you need to just report the error or report the failure, and you need to move ahead instead of stopping your script. At times you would also want to do this because suppose you are just clicking on an element and the click is not getting performed on the element. So instead of stopping on that line, you can report that the click is not being performed and you can continue with the scenario in case the click is not a very critical click, that is without which the flow cannot continue. Okay, so at times you get errors or failures in the program. You just need to report them and you need to continue with them. Okay, so over there exception handling helps us. Fine. Or if you just want to catch any error, so generally what we do is that we keep the lines which are capable of throwing exceptions in a try block like this. Many of you must have seen this code if you have seen Java. Okay, try and catch. See, I'll print over here system.out.println. Did not complete. Okay. So if there is any error on any line in the try block, the control comes inside the catch block. If there is no error, it will continue normally. If I write 9 divided by 2 and if I run this program, you will see that it prints A and B. C is not getting printed because the control never came inside the catch block. Okay, and if I write 9 divided by 0, see, no exception will be thrown. You won't get error like that before. On this line, the exception comes up, the control comes up in the catch block after that. This line is not executed because as soon as the exception comes up on this line, the lines after that will not be executed in the try block. Okay, but however, if we had lines outside the try block, okay, if I write X over here and Y over here, X and Y are outside the try catch blocks. So X and Y will certainly be printed in this case. Okay, but B will not be printed because the line on which exception comes up, the control goes in the catch block. In the catch block, when the control goes internally, Java creates the object of exception class. There is this internal class in Java known as exception. Java automatically creates the object of that class and sends you. With this object, you can do different things. You can see that what kind of exception was thrown. You can write e.getMessage, and if you run this, it will tell you that the type of exception was divided by 0. If you want to print the stack trace, the one which I showed you earlier, you can also print the stack trace. So this is going to run. And you see that arithmetic exception divided by 0. Right, so this is the stack trace.
Actually,
So
here in the output, the track should get printed after C, right?
yes, but you can't just predict it. Java prints it like this. Okay, if I write C after this, will still print before C. It's printing before C. If I write C over here, it's now printing. Oh, sorry, over here. If I write over here after this, so it's printing somewhere over here, somewhere over here. So you cannot just, predict the output like this, but you will get the complete stack trace. Okay. So this is how try catch works.
Hello, Ashish. Yeah, this print track is like it will show us like in detail where everything, right? That's
Yes, what happened,
okay.
on which line the error came up, everything.
Okay.
But it will also continue the program. This is the same stack trace you get if you wouldn't had written try catch and if you had directly written int I equals to 9 divided by 0 like I write over here. Okay, so this is the same stack trace which gets printed when there is an exception. Stack trace basically means the details, the exception lines detailing you that what happened when the program went wrong, so that you get the line numbers and the type of exceptions, everything. Okay, so in the catch block you have to explicitly print it in order to understand what happened. Okay, now there is something known as finally as well in Java. Finally is written after the catch block generally. This is this will be mandatory. Suppose whether the exception came or the weather exception did not come. Okay, whatever will be the scenario, there might be some code which you want to always execute. So that can be written over here in finally block. This code will always be executed whether exception comes or whether it is not coming, right? So if I write 9 divided by 2, if I run this, it prints x a b and it goes to the finally block. It's not coming over to the catch block, and it prints y as well. Okay, if I write 9 divided by 0, so this will throw an exception, will come over to the catch block, but it will certainly write always over here. Okay, so always is written over here, right? Because the finally block, it is mandatory to execute the code inside the finally block. Fine. So if you have any questions, you can please let me know.
Ashish, the finally block, is it useful only during try and catch or anywhere else we can use?
We use it with try catch. We use it with try catch block.
Ashish, the print C, that line normally also will write something like it's necessary to write something within the catch block, or it's not necessary, because if exception is found.
Generally, what happens is that if exception handling in the catch block, you can go and report the exception.
Okay.
This is the general thing in Selenium what we are going to do. Okay, you can put it in the reports, you can take the screenshots of the error or whatever you want.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so the line,
So that will have a different set of code for reporting.
yeah,
And
for example, yeah, that for example, these are the lines. We don't do it like this, but I'm just telling you, you can put these lines in a try catch block. And you can print e dot get message. What is the message? You can also print the stack trace. So when you run this code, hold on, I think it's, yeah, it's launching the browser. And you see that it goes here. See, it gives everything. Okay, it says that this is your e dot print stack trace. This output is because of e dot, sorry, get message, not e dot print stack trace. Unable to locate this particular element. It is giving you the XPath. For documentation on this error, please refer this, everything. And because of this line, it's printing the stack trace as well. And you can see that it's on the line number 28, this one. Okay, So this is what exception handling is. Now there are two types of exceptions in Java basically. One is a checked exception, one is a unchecked exception. Checked and unchecked. This is unchecked. Int I equals to something divided by 0. The unchecked exception, this comes at a runtime. You as a programmer, at times you are unable to predict this exception. When you run the program, while running the program, if the exception comes up, okay, whether the element is not found or it is not interactable, no such element exception is also unchecked exception because it is coming at the runtime. And there is something known as checked exception, which is at compile time. The code will not compile and run itself because of this. For example, if I write thread.sleep, okay, if I write the command thread.sleep, and if I write thread.sleep for say 3 seconds, right, so just you will get an error because as per Java this is a checked exception. Thread.sleep means that pause the program for 3 seconds. Okay, 3000 milliseconds. But you will get a direct error on this line. There is no technical error, but the only thing is Java forces you to put this line under a try catch block. There are few lines of code which you will have to mandatorily surround with try catch block. These are checked exceptions. To manage checked exceptions, you have to put a try catch block around them, or you can write in front of your functions that this method is capable of throwing something known as interrupted exception. Okay, to manage the checked exceptions, there are two ways. One is to surround with try catch block. Other is to add the throws declaration in front of the function. That's it. Java forces you to do this. Okay, in case of checked exceptions. In case of unchecked exceptions, fine, nothing. They are going to just come at the runtime, and you have to have that vision and the third eye to actually see that what possibly can go wrong. Okay, thread.sleep also we are going to use in our programs, in our training. Okay, it's not a bad practice to use it, very rarely. Okay, and at times, like as I told you, you are finding an element on the web page. All right, you are finding an element on the web page. Maybe the element you get no such element exception. So even if you add a try catch block, fine, you can catch it. But at times you want to introduce some delay because the element maybe it's loading after 2 or 3 seconds. The speed of execution of Selenium is very fast, and the element loading speed is at times quite slow. So you have to add a delay. So one way is that you can use thread.sleep. You can add a delay like that. Pause the program for 5 seconds. Okay, it's not giving me any exception because it's already in try catch. All right. So this line means pausing the program. It's not a good practice to pause the program because for every line you can use it once or twice, that is fine, but before every line you cannot use it to introduce a delay. It's like a mandatory pause. Okay, so we will see the workarounds for these kinds of issues as well. All right, I'll stop here. Okay, tomorrow we'll look more at this thread.sleep, waiting techniques, and customized XPaths and all. Okay, I'll give you the exercises as well. Fine. Please note them. do this. One is for Java as well, which I'm giving you, which will give you a clear insight into actually how Java works. Fine. So this is one. Hold on, I'm pinging you. System has I'll also mail you the exercises. Okay. I have pinged you on the chat as well. Day 6 and Java Essentials. Okay. Just copy this text. Right. And guys,